Hello and welcome to The Stack. This week on the show, we look at changes at influential online music magazine Pitchfork. Plus, Monkey, a title dedicated to contemporary Japanese literature in English translation. And finally, Stephen Watson from Stack Magazines introduces us to the Mortar. Enjoy the show. From Midori House in London, this is The Stack, 30 minutes of print industry analysis, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We start the show looking at a website that I've been visiting for years, the influential online music magazine Pitchfork. Starting this year, they are changing a few things in the website. First of all, there will be a Pitchfork subscription that costs $5 a month, allowing readers to score albums themselves, to be in dialogue with Pitchfork critics, and more. I had the pleasure to speak with Mano Sundaresan, head of editorial content for Pitchfork. We also discussed how they're celebrating their 30th year anniversary.
I started working in music journalism probably about 6 years ago or so, 6 to 7 years ago. I was working initially at NPR out of college as an intern on NPR Music. This was in 2019. That was an amazing experience. And for the next few years, while living in DC, working at NPR headquarters, I sort of rose through the ranks of that building. I ended up as a producer on a music podcast there called Louder Than a Riot, which is a great narrative podcast that lasted 2 seasons where our journalists investigated the relationship between, in the first season, rap music and the courts and the use of lyrics in court specifically. And then the second season, the sort of pervasive misogynoir violence against Black women within hip hop throughout history, exploring different stories. So that was an amazing experience in just music reporting. I basically combined that with this other burgeoning passion of mine, which was just being really on the ground and sort of covering the next wave of music, like the underground. And I started this blog in 2021 called No Bells, which was initially just sort of a hobby and a passion project, and it's still a passion project. I was doing No Bells for several years, just sort of interviewing artists from the underground, a lot of artists that were bubbling up on SoundCloud during COVID. It was a big focus. This hyperpop scene was kind of popping off around that time during the pandemic. And, as things started to go outside more and we started to have the restrictions lifted, No Bells became extremely active in sort of the local music scene of New York. We started throwing shows and we started just doing more video coverage of shows and of just like the music scene and nightlife of New York and beyond. And I think what we managed to do with that platform was just cover artists that genuinely had no coverage elsewhere and be the first to them. And being the first, as many know, is so important in music journalism because it means that you have opportunities to sort of tap back into them later. It's kind of about building with these artists a little bit.
They will remember you.
Exactly. So to that point, we were really first to so many artists. Even serious writing about the rapper Yeat, I think was that was a thing we did very early. And then he became a humongous artist and the Pitchforks of the world started covering him and often linked back to our article about him, So in doing so, we sort of tapped in with the next generation of not just artists, but I would say music fans and listeners and readers. And, believe it or not, there are actual kids in Gen Z that read. They really loved No Bells and it being a source for music discovery and artist interviews and just passionate, honest music criticism. So from that, I actually got laid off by NPR in 2023 and I was just doing No Bells pretty much all the time and just picking up freelance gigs to pay the bills. It became something a lot bigger than what I ever thought it would be. It became kind of a community of writers and artists too. And to bring it all the way to the present, Will Welch, who's the head of GQ and more recently of Pitchfork, or the global editorial director of both GQ and Pitchfork, he basically saw what I was doing, I think heard about it, and there was this opening for a new head of editorial content at Pitchfork, and he invited me to, I'll put it this way. Initially, we were just chatting, and then he sprung the question on me, and I was like, oh my God, wow, wait, are you serious? It was a big It was a very surreal moment. I always tell people this, but like the first 6 to 8 months I was at Pitchfork, I had no idea what I was doing. I had a lot of ideas, but I had never been in an environment like this before. So it was a learning experience, but here we are.
Of course, I want to talk about some of the changes at Pitchfork this year. So maybe, you said perhaps at the beginning you were like, what am I doing here? But I think perhaps, you gather your thoughts because I think the changes are quite interesting and I think some of them are quite positive. So in a way, I mean, you explain better than me, but I think Pitchfork is kind of moving to a subscription-based model. Not necessarily, there will still be a lot of content for free as all the readers are there, but there will be changes. I wonder if you can tell us a bit more about that.
The biggest change is that Pitchfork's review section is going to now be paywalled and subscription based. The subscription gets you full access to Pitchfork's reviews archive, which is, believe it or not, over 30,000 reviews. It also gets you commenting and rating features, which is a first for the site. You can literally go to a review on the site and say we, gave something a B&M, a best new music with an 8.3. And you heard the album and you're like, I don't know how I feel about this. This is like okay to me. You can like go in the comments and you can type what you thought and you can give it a score that you would give it. We've actually just published our scoring guidelines. So let you in on that secret. You can go to our website and you can find out exactly what every score in the site means now. So
that was very useful because, especially in this age of the super fans, people care about the score at Pitchfork. So I know sometimes it can be controversial. Say, I can't believe it was so low or I can't believe it was so high. But it's lovely now that we can see actually and understand. Perhaps sometimes a 6.5 is not that bad.
That's what I've been saying. I feel like so many artists especially will like get up in arms about anything lower than an 8 or a 7, and I understand why. I feel like if you looked at the 6 as like a D, D plus in like a schooling system, that isn't great. But how we read the 6 is the classic phrase around here is 6.8, good, not great. You made a good album if you made a 6.
Which is already better than most in a way. But one thing that I'm quite interested here, of course, users will be able to give their scores as well. Do you feel that's a little bit controversial? I mean, tell us a bit more, because of course, as you said in your editor's letter, the critic, is still the Pitchfork view, and that still matters very much. But now you're opening up a tiny bit more.
Yeah, I mean, we are doing this because we aren't living the times we lived in 30 years ago, simply put. We are in an era where everybody has an opinion and can share that opinion instantly. People always talk about how taste is very hard to come by, but taste is actually, or at least a semblance of good taste is very easy to come into. You can just go to Instagram and look at these like elaborate mood boards that some accounts will post of just like a guide to shoegaze or a guide to, Japanese math rock or whatever it is. And you can just like absorb all of that so fast now. What we're really missing is a wealth of knowledge and sort of people having this like depth of appreciation of art. And I think like that's deeper than just taste to me. That's like criticism. That's like where criticism comes in. I think that as the site evolves in this new era, that criticism, that like rigor of breaking down not just why the critic likes the album, but sort of what that album says about the genre it's part of, how it's breaking conventions, how it's fitting into the current moment, and what it says about culture right now. Those are things that the critic is still best equipped to do. And the commenter, most commenters, I believe, are just not, it's not their job. They are listeners primarily, they have opinions, and this is a place for them to shout their opinions. And to go off that, we're in this time where I think we need something like this. We need something like a sort of moderated, wholesome, good faith forum of ideas in music. I think social media is, to be frank, just cooked. I think there's no place on social media to like have a meaningful conversation about anything, let alone music. And the Pitchfork comment section, if you go scroll, is already full of people having surprisingly thoughtful and wholesome and earnest discussions about music.
And one thing about Pitchfork as well, I love end of year lists. I think they're very You know what? They're good for me to say, oh my God, I've missed that album because it's hard to keep up sometimes. So tell us about even the role of those lists. I think sometimes people can be dismissive of lists, but I think, especially at Pitchfork, I mean, there's a role of showing new music because some of them, they're a little bit obscure. I mean, or maybe it was released in the same week as Taylor Swift's latest album and it got completely kind of, it disappeared in the charts or something like that.
The lists are a reflection of two things. I would say the reflection of our collective taste. So you go to these lists and you see basically what everybody on staff is really into, and you see what our freelancers are into. You see what, received a lot of love and support in the list making process from all of our writers. But I think the lists are also a reflection of what was interesting this year and sort of what we think was relevant and shaped culture. And I want to say that with an asterisk because I think that is oftentimes a very overblown part of list making for other publications and for people who are trying to sort of take stock of culture is people ascribing a lot of value to things that are important and things that had a moment. A lot of things that had a moment are just not good or like bad. Like AI slop was everywhere last year. That wasn't a good thing that happened. We aren't going to put that on a list. In a similar vein, I'm sure there was some pop music that while it topped the charts, you'll never find a Pitchfork list. So I'll say that with an asterisk. I just think that's important because there are records that you can't really separate from the moment that they had. And that affects how you think about the music too. So to answer your question, I would say it's these two sort of vectors of taste and cultural cataloging that intersect.
Manu, I'm curious. Of course, Pitchfork is a US-based publication. I'm sure it's your biggest market as well. But how international it is? Because, listen, I'm from Brazil, living here in London, but people know about Pitchfork, music fans across the world. Is there any other areas that you have a lot of fans? I'm just curious. Or what are your other biggest markets?
So our second biggest audience is in the UK, where we do an annual music festival, Pitchfork Music Festival London. It happens every November. We've been doing that pretty much since COVID opened back up. We also have a festival that's been going a bit longer than that in Paris, and a brand new festival now entering year 3 in Mexico City. So we have these like outposts, and I think that reflects just how widespread our audience is. I would say it's primarily still US based, but especially with these festivals, oftentimes the biggest reason booking agents and sort of these companies that work festivals are so excited in partnering with Pitchfork is that they view us as a vessel for bringing artists that wouldn't normally play in a certain country or city to that place. So, for instance, we can bring Beth Gibbons of Portishead to Mexico City. And like that, I think that was the first time she's played Mexico City, or one of the first times. Pitchfork can sort of be this indie rock vessel now, sort of just experimental music vessel for booking artists and sort of being an incubator of talents in all of these different places now, which I think is so exciting. And I think, where there's a language barrier in certain places, I think that's how we can step in, is we can sort of be this tastemaker.
Well, you mentioned some exciting stuff about the festivals and, of course, the big changes at Pitchfork. So are you excited for 2026 in terms of where Pitchfork is heading?
Very excited. Yeah. Pitchfork's in a really good place. I'm so excited about our 30th anniversary this year. We are going to go all out for that in the fall. Stay tuned for that. I'm really excited about just continuing to build what the subscription is. I think my biggest worry when I was launching it was a very sort of particular one, but I feel like this is a very basic comment section where there isn't like an element of user customizability and just like more features, and sort of it doesn't feel like totally modern yet. And I just wanted to get it out the door. I wanted to like put it out, but we're gonna keep updating it and keep just refining it and making this experience as interesting and fun and engaging as possible for Pitchfork readers. And then I'm just excited about music coming out this year. I think it's going to be a really strong year. Some of the promos I've been getting for like just the first few months of the year have been really exciting, really fun, really in love with what's going on in rap music right now. I feel like as always, the sort of mainstream is latching onto its like usual artists, but the underground is thriving, and you will see that reflected in our coverage on the site. I feel like music's in a really good place, and we are coming off, in my opinion, one of the best years for music in years. Like I think 2025 will be like will reach 2016 levels, like one day. So,
Well,
and
I'm already very excited then. So,
yeah,
because I was going to ask, what are you listening to at the moment? I mean, is there anything in
yeah,
particular, a genre or an artist you're
yeah.
loving at the moment?
I just got into this band called the Cells. They're from London. They're like a duo making kind of electro clash mixed with like indie tronica. They're really fun.
Can you repeat the name?
Uh,
Because I love Electroclash, so I think that's up my
the
street.
the Cells, FEMCELS. I'm always interested in what's going on in Milwaukee rap. That's my Roman Empire, I would say. There's this rapper named Lil Sin who just released a tape called Bamathon, Bamathon. It's pretty fun. If there's one thing about me is I'm big on rabbit holes. I'll like Google a random city in the US and type in like rap scene or punk scene or something and just sort of like learn the history. So right now I'm doing that with Atlanta, specifically like the Dungeon family, which produced all Outkast albums. They had this amazing sort of extended universe of artists that they worked with or were part of the Dungeon family. One of them, his name is Witch Doctor, and the rapper Billy Woods, who we love at Pitchfork, in an interview mentioned Witch Doctor in passing a while ago, and I just like went and listened to his album, and it's like if you made the Outkast albums from that era like even more like spiritual and almost religious tinged, gospel-y, kind of gothic. It's really good. The Witch Doctor album is called A SWAT Healing Ritual.
And Mano, just sorry, because so interesting talking to you, but I know Pitchfork had some sort of a print publication for a few years. I mean, is that in the cards? I mean, because, I have a feeling the Pitchfork fans would love to have something.
So when Ryan Schreiber, the original editor of the site, started the site, he had a lot of crazy ideas. And I think this is one that like everyone forgot about, but he made a year-end, he made a whole book, like literally a whole book dedicated to 2003 end of year lists and like their favorite album reviews of the year and
I
like
love it.
just like all these it's like a huge book. I'm like I don't even know how you pulled this off, but anyways, I say that to say I'm really trying to put together like a book this year for the 30th anniversary, and I've been trying to get a lot of inspo for it right now, including this. It's literally called Thesaurus Musicarum, which is a I talked to Ryan about it. He was like, I deeply regret that name. I really want to do something physical. We've been doing these like zines every quarter. Each one centers a cover star that we really like and we profile. This one we did back in December on Dijon, who's
Oh, love Dijon. Very nice,
yeah,
actually.
yeah, yeah. You know Dijon. I mean, he
Yeah.
worked on the Justin Bieber album. He has his own album called Baby that's amazing. We had a nice story that went up with him, and I made that into a zine. We dropped four of these last year, four zines, and more physical media on the way.
Thank you very much, Manu. And for more information, go to pitchfork.com. From Asako Yuku's novel Butter to a growing list of international bestsellers, Japanese fiction is attracting increasing attention around the world. One publication that has played a key role in introducing Japanese literature to global readers is Monkey, new writing from Japan. Monkey is the English-language edition of the Tokyo-based literary magazine Monkey, and the only magazine devoted entirely to contemporary Japanese literature in English translation. In Japan, the team also publishes a magazine focused on Japanese translations of American fiction. Monocle's Ryoma Takahashi spoke with Monkey's founding editor and one of Japan's most highly regarded translators of American fiction, Motoyuki Shibata, and also with contributing editor and author and visiting professor at Waseda University, Roland Kautz.
My name is Moto Shibata. I run the literary journal Monkey, both in the Japanese edition and the English edition.
My name is Roland Nozomu Keltz. I'm a writer and journalist, and I'm a contributing editor to Monkey magazine. And I also lecture part-time at Waseda University.
So, first of all, what kind of magazine is Monkey?
First of all, it's a literary journal. But literary journal sounds serious. And we are serious. But we do believe that the literature can be serious and fun, profound, and also interesting. in the English edition, we also work with the best translators of Japanese fiction into English.
So I usually just say that Monkey is the only annual English language magazine of Japanese writing.
Moto-san, what do you keep in mind when you make this magazine? Your editorial policy, for example.
My policy as a literary translator is to convey the sense of fun which I had when I read the original to readers who read my translations. Translations can be accurate, but no fun. And that's not my idea of translation. When you read literature in the original language, it can be profound, it can make you think, but in lots of times it's fun just to read it. In translation, that sense of fun or the sense of humor is the first thing to disappear. So we like to keep it.
Well, for one thing, the magazine is not just literature. There's plenty of visual art, beautiful illustrations, occasionally photography, poetry, sometimes even classical Japanese writing from no plays. So it's a cornucopia of creative energy and various types of creative products. I mean, what's really gratifying to me, having been involved in my own way for a number of years, is I've watched young writers like Mieko Kawakami, Hiromi Kawakami, two Kawakamis, also Tomoka Shibasaki. I've known them now for years, and I've watched them emerge around the world. So to see Monkey as a place where they kind of got their start. So I really trust Moto and Ted to discover these authors and return to them. And not only the authors, but excellent translators, which should be emphasized. A lot of people, I think, don't understand how important and what kind of creative energy the translator brings to the project.
Yes, I think the English edition of Monkey introduces a wide range of Japanese literature. So, which aspects of Japanese literature are you most keen to highlight?
I always like works of fiction that can change the reader's idea of what fiction can do. It doesn't have to be experimental, it doesn't have to be avant-garde, but I always like to the work I translate to give readers a new idea. Oh, this is what you can do with fiction. Why, I never thought of that. That kind of feeling is what I like to give readers.
How about Roland-san? What do you think Western readers find most appealing about Japanese literature?
Yeah, I would just add to that. To me, Haruki Murakami sort of set the template for a lot of the wonderful writing in Monkey. And what I mean by that is that, people read a Murakami novel, and especially if they're American readers, they think, oh, this is surreal. What's happening here? Something's falling from the sky. A super frog is talking to you. What's going on? But in the Japanese vision, in those cases, it's actually purely natural. And I think that is very exciting for readers outside of Japan, that sensibility. And I actually believe that sensibility of organically mixing the surreal with the real is more like the way we all live today.
I think in today's globalized world, translation feels more important than ever. So what do you see as the value of translation in the literary world?
Yes, I think culture is always healthier when there is a lot of interaction going on with other cultures. I can only, speak of the example of Japan. We have always been looking at America, what's going on in America, as a model. But we never thought that we would be seen as a model. So it was the interaction was almost always one way, but now it's going back and forth.
Yeah, I would just love to add to that from my perspective, translation has become much more important, and that's partly just because of awareness. To be honest, when I was a kid, the first time I read Dostoevsky, the Russian author, I had no idea he was translated. I just thought he had an exotic name, and I thought he was writing in English. But I think young people today, not just in the United States, but around the world, because of the internet, they've become keenly aware that there are websites in different languages, that manga is written in Japanese, it's not written in English. And so they become, even if they don't want to, they become aware that there are other languages out there, and they are used in a different way. They have different characteristics, different sensitivities, different vocabulary. So I think the awareness is much greater now, partly through technology. And you now see books in English with the translator's name on the cover, which is a huge change in English language publishing.
Moto-san, when translating Japanese literature into English, what do you find most interesting or most challenging?
The use of the verbs. In Japanese, you use a lot of adverbs. So you say, aruku, walk, and then you add an adverb to describe how somebody walks. But in English, you can do that, but normally, more effectively, you use a different verb. There are a lot of synonyms for walk. So, whereas in Japanese, you use an adverb to describe how somebody walks, but in English, you choose the right kind of verb. Good translators can do that.
So finally, I think Japanese novels are becoming increasingly popular in English-speaking world. For example, Butter by Asako Yuzuki. So how do you see the current state of Japanese literature overseas?
Well, basically, it's wonderful. 20 years ago, no one cared about Japanese literature. And 10 years ago, everyone was interested, but they only knew Haruki Murakami. Now, they are aware that there are so many good writers, writing exciting stuff in Japan, and they are really interested.
There's kind of a boom in Japanese literature and Japanese writing, even if it's not all literature. You might have known in the UK, there's a boom in Japanese books about cats and books. I always feel that any kind of gateway is better than nothing. And I've seen young Americans and young Europeans who become manga fans and anime fans. Then they want to learn about the history behind it. Bungo Stray Dogs, this Japanese animation series, very popular overseas. And there are characters. Dazai Osamu is a character in the series. And suddenly his books are unlikely bestsellers in English because this mob of young people decided, I want to know who this guy was. So I think the gateway, it might seem frivolous or superficial, but once you enter, you could become a very serious reader and a very serious student of Japanese history.
Thank you very much. And for more information, go to monkeymagazine.org. And now we welcome back a friend of the show, Stephen Watson, from the independent magazine club Stack Magazines, which was established in 2008, delivering one print magazine to its subscribers every month. Now he's adding a new digital platform called the Mortar, where each week they choose 2 interesting stories from a selection from global independent titles. The Mortar was Stephen's way to go broader, representing a wider range of magazines. He tells me all about the new projects.
So Stack has always been about helping people to find great writing by independents. And so the Mortar kind of takes that on a level. So with Stack, we send out a different magazine every month. And with the Mortar, we send out 2 stories every week. So, we've had all sorts of stuff in just the first month. We had a story from The Fence called Love in a Hostile Environment, which was that was the first one that we sent right at the start of January. And it's about asylum seekers in the UK who are trying to find love, and this journalist who has done a lot of work with asylum seekers and writing about what is life like when you're living this kind of precarious existence, but you are trying to have a love life as well. Or then the one that we just sent on Sunday is from a magazine called Emergence, which is all about nature and spirituality. And it's this amazing story about the moon. So we sent it on Sunday because it was the full moon on Sunday, and kind of like, where did the moon come from and how does it affect the world that we live in today? So the aim is to just kind of find really interesting little nuggets basically from out there and make it really easy for people to just read them in their inbox.
And what I find it great is, some of those magazines have been featured on Stack Magazine, so people have received that in the past. So they have already a relationship with some of those titles. It's a way to keep track of those, the new issues, for example, right?
Well, exactly. And I mean, to be honest, it started partly out of frustration for me because with Stack, we get to send 12 magazines in a year. Now, that's nice and everything, but there's way more than 12 magazines that I want to be able to put in front of people. So doing this massively expands the range and means that we can just find one story from this one place to put in front of people. And then hopefully, if that really kind of strikes a chord with them, then they go and find that magazine for themselves.
And Stephen, how does it work? So, of course, this is an edition, so the Mortar, but Stack Magazine subscribers, they can also add up a little monthly fee for the Mortar as well, right?
I mean, that would be a good idea. I'd like to do that. We run the Mortar on a thing called Beehive, which is a newsletter platform. And as far as I can tell, there's no way of linking across our magazine subscription and the Mortar. But that's fine. I think that it's actually been really interesting seeing how people respond to it. So, with Stack, we're trying to sell a subscription all the time. And so, that's £12 a month if you're in the UK, and that's all, it's good value and everything, but it's £12. And so with the Mortar, part of what I liked about it is we can just say, just sign up. You can just have these emails. Because I was thinking, that's going to be easy. It's going to be I'm used to trying to get people to pay £12 a month. Free would be easy, but it's been a lot harder than I expected. And I think, again, when I think about myself, I don't sign up to many emails because I get a lot of emails. And so there is definitely this barrier to get across of I know you don't want most emails, but this one's really good. This is really worth it.
And you know me already.
Exactly,
From previous projects as well. And, I was looking at the Mortar. There's been quite a lot of content as well. So, of course, with Stack Magazines, people are used to one magazine a month, but I think there'll be plenty of content there as well.
Oh, there's loads. So
you started 1st of January. There's already so much on the
I know. My friends were like, why are you starting on the 1st of January? And I was like, no, it's great because it's a new year. It's a new year. It's a new project. It's new beginnings. And then on New Year's Eve, I was working on it and something went wrong. And I was just like, why did I decide to do this? But so on New Year's Day, we launched with 3 stories. All of those stories had actually been sent out to Stack subscribers before. So I kind of wanted to have something there that was okay, if you're just coming across this for the first time, you get an idea of the sort of stories. But now everything we've sent since then has not been actually sent out as a Stack delivery. And that's kind of the rule that I'm making to start with, at least. It feels like it makes sense that if I were a Stack subscriber, I wouldn't want to get something that I'd had in a magazine. But with all of this, I'm prepared to test that. Maybe people might really like the idea of you've picked out just this one story to make it easier to focus on this thing. So there's lots of learning as we go.
I mean, from my perspective, I really love print, as you know, but sometimes I see a magazine in the newsstand, but I don't pay enough attention. But then, if I am a subscriber of the Mortar, then I say, there's an interesting story from the fans about asylum seekers falling in love. This is very original. That probably would make me go and buy a copy of the fans, right? That's the whole point.
Well, that's the idea. That's what I'm hoping for. And to be honest, because I know that even that mechanic is that's a difficult thing to do, to get someone to actually take an action and go out like that. But even if it's just making somebody more aware of the fence, then, I still think that that's a good thing to be doing.
And now there's 2 updates a week or something like that. I wonder,
right.
Because it's interesting to know like how much is too much. Should you send you more, less? I think you will be learning as you go in a way, right?
100%. So at the moment we send 2 a week. We send on Tuesdays and Fridays. I actually today have just been writing a post sort of summing up the first month, but also asking the Mortar's readers for a bit of feedback, because I'd love to know, is 2 a week too many? I know that my wife, she's weeks behind already. She's like, I've not made time to do this. So, I'm aware that not everybody is making the time to sit and read religiously.
I was even talking to someone recently about newsletters, even the best time to send a newsletter, because for example, I quite like a 3 p.m. one, because I do get, actually, I don't know, what time do you send your emails,
So we send ours at 8. So the idea is that in the UK, we're at 8 o'clock. So obviously then in Europe, so that's like 9 a.m. So people could conceivably still be on their way to work. I think that the Mortar lands best when you're maybe on the train on the way to work or something. Those little pockets of time, that's what I'm trying to get into.
Very smart. Well, we still need to talk about Stack Magazine as well, because it's still going strong in 2026. I wonder, what can you tell us for this year? What are you expecting? Are you happy with the way things are going?
So we have an event which is happening on Thursday this week. I'm sure we'll be too late by the time this goes out. So we're going to be at St Bride Foundation in London, and we've got The Fence, getting mentioned again, Dispatch, Die Quieter Please, and Piscine, which is a brand new magazine from Glasgow, which I totally love. And they're all going to be selecting 2 stories, and the people who wrote them are going to be reading them on stage. And the idea is to kind of replicate the experience of reading a magazine, but as a stage show. And we did it last summer in the basement of a pub in Shoreditch, and it was like loads of fun. So this is a step up, a bigger venue. Tickets have sold really well. I can't wait to get in there and do it. And to be honest, just for sort of Stack things generally this year, I'd love to do more of that. I think that these days it's very easy to rely on digital for stuff. And clearly, we're on Instagram all the time, and that's all important. But I think it's when you actually get out in a room with people, I think that's when you sort of really make those connections. So yeah, I'm looking to do lots more stuff in person this year.
Do you get a lot of emails from your subscribers? Because, of course, every month is something quite completely different. Then, do they say oh, actually, Stephen, I love that one. Or maybe this one, maybe not so much. Are they very interactive with you?
So people don't tend to email if they didn't like the magazine. People tend to, they want to say I love this thing. Yes. Thank you so much. And honestly, the thing that we find, and this has been the case right from the start, is there's never the one magazine that everyone's like, oh yeah, this is fantastic. It's always about these little sort of niches within niches, and a magazine will evoke a response in somebody which you couldn't really have predicted. So, that's why I really love this. I love the fact that we can spend time finding this stuff and then put it in front of people and let them kind of make their own interpretations.
And I did give you a heads up that I might ask something like this, but have you seen any trends in magazines, or are you still seeing a lot of new titles that you're excited?
There's new stuff all the time. So like I said, Piscine, which is the magazine that was coming down from Glasgow to speak at St Bride's. This is okay. I'll give it away. Basically, they are our February delivery. So
exclusive here on the stack.
They launched in November, and they had a super small run. It was like a local Glaswegian thing. And there's a woman called Maria Bustos who'd been involved with them, and she kind of gave me the heads up. And so I got a PDF from them, and just straight away I was blown away, because
what is the magazine about?
So it's an arts and culture magazine based in Glasgow. All the people who work on it work full-time in the city's bars and restaurants. So this magazine is it's just as much about thinking about the kind of, sort of exploitation and the real hardship of people who are working in hospitality, And it's also about these people trying to do something creative, getting excited about this piece of art. So I'm really looking forward to seeing their stories read live on the stage on Thursday. And I'm really looking forward to putting this magazine in front of people who wouldn't otherwise have seen it. And I think in terms of trying to sort of spin this out into a trend. So, this is it's a deliberately scrappy kind of magazine. The point here is the ideas and the words on the page and this beautiful illustration in a way that kind of reminds me a lot of The Fence. I think The Fence is doing it in a more polished way and with bigger writers. But, it also is it's not really about the physical objects of the magazine in terms of this big heavy thing with a spine that you're going to put on your shelf and keep forever. It's much more about this sort of disposable medium of a magazine that you pick up and you read and you love it, and then it goes in recycling and the next one comes. So that I think that might be something of a trend in terms of maybe it's partly to do with environmental awareness. People are aware now when you're going to print something, you don't necessarily want to make something big and heavy. Paper's very expensive. The emissions that are taken to transport stuff around. So I think that all of that is a kind of a push towards this kind of lighter, more disposable kind of approach. But then I think it's also probably just as much aesthetic and intellectual and people tapping into something that they really want to be part of.
You mentioned intellectual, and again, let's talk about The Fence again, because even people here in the office, my colleagues, they all get excited, They always ask, friend, what's on the stack this week? If I say The Fence is going to be there, everybody's like, oh my God, I need to listen to this. There's a little buzz about the title, I have to say.
Oh, 100%.
Shout out to The Fence there.
and look, they do an amazing job with it. Charlie, who's the editor there, is still, I think, the only full-time member of staff. I met him when he made the first issue, and I remember we recorded an episode of the Our Stack podcast, and what was that now? Maybe that was 6 years ago or something. That magazine, it was very different then to what it is now, and I think that he has really stuck with it and learned and refined it and change this magazine. And I think that now, you're right. It's something that people are really excited to get hold of and again, to be part of this thing.
Thank you, Stephen. And for more information on the Mortar, go to mortarmagazine.com. And that's it for this week's show. My thanks to our editor, Jack Jewers. Any comments or queries, feel free to write to me, Fernando, at fp@monocle.com. And remember, we're back next Saturday at 10 a.m. London time. Meanwhile, you can always listen again at monocle.com or subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You've been listening to The Stack. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.